Hello. Welcome to another day of the 21 days of personal development. We are already on day 14. Today we're talking about patterns in our lives. One of the big things that every person can acknowledge or can see in their lives at times is that there are patterns that they have seen before. And these might be good things, they might be bad things, they might be habits, they might be things that people have tried to change for years and keep cropping up as a habit or as a pattern that they can see. Now, one of the things with patterns in our lives is that in many cases, it makes us feel a little bit helpless. We don't really have any idea how to solve it. We don't really have any idea how to do anything about it, in fact. And I'd like to offer a few suggestions today that might or might not help you. So take what you'd like and leave the rest. There's a writer who has written one or two things that I've come across online. Her name is Maria Christina MacDonald. She tends to write for things that are fairly about like meditation and stuff like that. So you might or might not find her writings useful. I found that she has a very unique way of looking at certain things. So sometimes it is very useful. And I'd like to quote something that she said, which I'm sure many other people have said similar things. So this isn't earth-shattering, but I think it's a good way for us to start this. When you're open to recognizing a pattern, you can change it by learning the lesson, and in doing so, change your life. Recognizing patterns and accepting that that is actually a pattern in my life can sometimes be the very most difficult step when it comes to patterns. We might see the pattern, but to actually recognize and accept that it is a pattern that we need to do something about, that is very, very difficult. And I like the way she puts it, because when we talk about accepting something in our lives that we maybe don't want to say, oh, I do that, she puts it as learning the lesson. So when you put it like that, it's a little bit easier to swallow, in my opinion. Now, when we're talking about recognizing these patterns, one of the keys is our feelings. Often, patterns that occur in our lives are accompanied by pretty strong feelings. And these feelings that crop up are actually have a very, very strong link to why these patterns occur. Now, just again, as I've said before, I'm not a therapist or a counselor or a psychologist. I'm a life coach. And what I'm sharing with you is from my own experience in my own life, from what I've seen in clients, and from the way that I understand this. So please, I'm not claiming to be an expert in any way in this subject. Nevertheless, often patterns are very closely linked to a very particular feeling, and that is fear. And it's often not easy to admit that the pattern that we're seeing is actually the root of that pattern is actually fear of something. Actually acknowledging that it's a fear of something is very, very difficult because it makes us feel vulnerable. And we're very resistant to feeling vulnerable. And often the pattern that we're witnessing is actually some kind of a almost defense mechanism. Might be a very unhealthy one, or it might be one that's really that we don't like ourselves, but it is nevertheless often some kind of defense against this feeling of fear, and that we don't want to acknowledge that fear, or that we don't know what to do about it. And so the pattern pops up. It's sort of how we cope with whatever that fear is. Now, it's important when we recognize a pattern to step back for a moment and ask, okay, what is my part of this whole thing? Okay, and I'm going to give you some steps. When we're talking about feelings and fears, there are actual steps. Many of them come from the work of anxiety, people who have written and done a lot of work in the realm of anxiety and helping with anxiety. But I think that they can be very useful and very effective with when we're trying to look at the patterns in our lives. So to overcome a fear requires that we acknowledge that the fear exists in our lives. And often we will feel a feeling, anger, frustration. The feeling that we feel will very rarely be fear. It will manifest itself in some other emotion. But if we look at it and actually step back and take a look at that, we can often realize that down below whatever emotion is coming up to the surface, or action, whatever action is coming up to the surface, is a fear. Okay, so one of the very, very difficult steps of acknowledging patterns in our life is to actually find what the fear is that's down there deep underneath. And this often takes a lot of allowing ourselves to look, to like really look at the feelings that we're feeling. Now, to overcome a fear requires acknowledgement of that fear in our life and acceptance that the fear is not dangerous. If the fear comes true, it might be dangerous, but the fear itself is just a feeling. And a feeling, however uncomfortable, is not dangerous. Okay? When we acknowledge a feeling that we are having and accept that the feeling is not dangerous, we actually open the door to being able to deal with whatever is behind the feeling. Okay. So a good rule of thumb is to say to yourself, feel the feeling, accept that the feeling is uncomfortable but not dangerous, allow the feeling to sit with you if it needs to for a little bit, and be patient with the feeling. Now, there's an author, and if you do struggle with anxiety or with patterns and the feelings from these patterns, I encourage you to look up the author Claire Weekes. That's C-L-A-I-R-E, Claire, and her surname W-E-E-K-E-S, Claire Weekes. She's an author And she's been writing about anxiety. Most of her books were published quite a long time ago, but they are still acknowledged to this day as being incredibly good and incredibly helpful for dealing with anxiety. And I'm going to just share with you 4 steps, and I'm going to be sharing it with you in a very simple manner. In her books, she goes into a lot more detail. She writes in a way that's incredibly easy to read. It's actually a pleasure reading her books, and she explains it beautifully, and it's really written for someone who's actually struggling with anxiety. So I can't recommend it highly enough. All right, so the 4 steps are: don't run away from the feeling, rather face the feeling. Don't fight the feeling, rather accept the feeling. Don't fight the sensations of the feeling, rather go along with the sensations. She calls it to just float with the feeling and let go of trying to just hold on. And you know, that tight grip that you have often when emotions and feelings come up. And number 4, don't be impatient with time. Rather, just let time pass. When we're feeling anxious, when we're feeling fear, when we're in the middle of a pattern in our life that is making us, you know, those emotions rise to the surface, we want it to go away. We want it to go away fast, and we're holding on. So she says, accept the feeling, don't fight it, don't run away from it. Face it, accept it, float with it, and don't have any expectation on how long it's going to take that you need to float with it. Don't be like, oh my word, I can't handle this for 5 minutes. Just allow it. Now that sounds easy. I mean, that sounds like it sounds, you know, too simple. But as I say, she has been repeatedly over the years, even as new research has come out and new things have come out, her work is still regarded as extremely accurate and extremely beneficial to dealing with anxiety and feelings that are overwhelming. So we're not going to go into much more than that. Feel your feelings. Accept that they're uncomfortable, but they are not dangerous. Allow the feeling. Allow it to sit and be patient with it. And by doing that, realize and be very excited about the fact that by doing that, you are opening that door to actually being able to begin to deal with whatever fear is sitting behind that. Or if it's not a fear, whatever else is sitting behind that, it actually opens the door for you to be able to start dealing with that. Our patterns can be recognized and changed, no matter how long we've had them. I can quite openly tell you that some patterns that followed me through childhood, through my 20s, through even parts of my 30s, I was able to finally put them to rest by following these very, very simple steps. And again, as we've said in many other videos, when you're dealing with things, you're not supposed to be dealing with them alone. Make sure that if you need to get people to help you with this, that you call and ask people to help you. There are many toll-free numbers that you can phone. And if you're in South Africa, and An easy one to remember is 0800 456 789. I hope that you found this useful. Have a great day. Bye.